Hello and welcome to another episode of Dave's Random Item Show. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. Today we're going to be discussing a unique set of items from my collection. These are some display pieces from the Real Monsters arcade game. With this video, we're going to do things a little differently for reasons I'll get into. But before we get to the arcade game, let's discuss the show itself. Classy Kupo produced the first 3 years of The Simpsons, Rugrats, Wild Thornberrys, Duckman, Stressed Eric, Rocket Power, As Told by Ginger, Santo Bugito, and All Grown Up. And outside of the Nickelodeon and cartoon stuff, their list of credits include movies, TV shows, title sequences, and commercials, and it's so long and so impressive that I can't really do it justice here. Now, Real Monsters was created by Classy Kupo in 1994. The show follows the adventures of three young monsters, Ikius, Oblina, and Crumb. Ikius is a small red-violet monster with yellow eyes, rabbit-like ears, and is the main protagonist of the show. Oblina is a black and white striped monster with big red lips, green eyes, and black slit-shaped pupils shaped like an upside-down candy cane. And Crumb is an orange-tan, hairy monster whose eyeballs are attached to his body and usually carried in his hands. The three youngsters live in a garbage dump in New York City, and they attend the Monster Academy, which is run by the Grumble, who tends to mistreat his students only because he wants them to do their best and wants them to achieve. And the show, like many Classy Kupo productions, was made with tender loving care by everyone involved, and at times was very, very deep, but could be counted on to always deliver an entertaining show. Now, the series was nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Animation, but they lost to Rugrats. That must have been interesting for Classy Kupo, being nominated for two Emmys. Two shows nominated for one Emmy, and it must have been something. But it's hard to overstate how big of a franchise this was. They had everything from video games to toys to books, trading cards, numerous cameos in other Nickelodeon media, and the arcade game that we're talking about today. Now, when it comes to the arcade game, there isn't a whole lot to work with because after a lengthy time searching, I haven't been able to find any video footage and only 3 photographs and 1 advertising flyer. Now, the website that has the advertising flyer claims that this game was made in 1992 by something called Funhouse Games Incorporated. We'll get to them in a few minutes. But this is obviously wrong because the pilot episode didn't air until 1994, so it's most likely that this was made in 1996, and again, we'll get to that in a few minutes. So, the game is a timed game where the goal is to plunge a toilet plunger down, which in turn shoots a ball up and it hits a switch. Whatever light is lit when the switch is hit is what the player wins. There is a jackpot, though how exactly you win is very unclear. It's obvious that the game really didn't sell all that well and wasn't very popular, as very few, if any, examples of the game are still in existence. It's clearly a dud, and we'll get to the reasons why in a few minutes, but I purchased a set of the ticket value displays, which I will now show here. So now we're going to discuss Funhouse Games Incorporated. Who exactly is Funhouse Games Incorporated? Well, it was a very short-lived subsidiary of WMS Industries, formerly Williams Electronics. Their arcade roster was robust, including Stargate, Joust, Robotron 2084, Sinistar, Moon Patrol, which is actually licensed, but Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam. Their pinball lineup included some very well-known and legendary titles including Gorgar, Firepower, Black Knight, Jungle Lord, Space Shuttle Comet, High Speed, Pinbot, F-14 Tomcat, Cyclone, Taxi, Black Knight 2000, Funhouse, The Machine, Bride of Pinbot, Terminator 2, Fishtails, The Getaway High Speed 2, and the well-known and well-respected The Addams Family, my all-time favorite pinball game of all time. That's redundant, but who really cares? Now, this is, I think, one of the reasons that the game failed. I cannot understand why, for the life of me, you would need to have a subsidiary to put your two arcade games out. Why? You mean to tell me that the same company that made NBA Jam thought that their name and logo wasn't good enough for Real Monsters? I mean, seriously, all you had to do was say, from the makers of Mortal Kombat, that would get people interested. Williams, even back then, was a recognizable company. I don't think anybody would have objected to it. Why would you brand them? Why wouldn't you brand them as such? Now, Funhouse Games, as I said, released a total of 2 arcade games that I've been able to determine. There may have been more, but if there are more, I haven't been able to find them. They also released a convoluted Wheel of Fortune arcade game. And again, neither one of these things I can find gameplay footage of, but people do remember the game, as I've mentioned it in comments on videos, and they do remember the game. But they were clearly a bit more convoluted than they really needed to be, and that's sort of why they didn't sell well, and Funhouse Games Incorporated didn't last too much longer. Now, that's one of the reasons I think this game failed. Here are some more. Reason number 1, the gross out factor. Okay, gross out humor was a thing in the 1990s. I get it. Hasn't really aged well, but I get it. But they were marketing this game to young kids. We're talking maybe 4 to 10 years old. Remember that in a lot of these instances, the parent does have final say over if the child can play the game or not. And while some parents might get the gross out factor and be able to appreciate it, I guarantee you that there are some more conservative parents who didn't like the idea of gross out humor when it comes to arcade games, which is understandable. Now, reason number 2 is a lack of connection to the actual series. Now, I haven't watched Real Monsters in some time, and I'm not going to go through and watch, every episode to try to figure this out, but was there ever a toilet plunged during the course of the series? It almost seems to me like this was meant to be something else, and was slapped with the Real Monsters branding to try to get the deal done. Now, in their credit, if that's what they did, more power to them, it worked. But it's not, again, it's like, it is gross out humor, and there was gross out on the show, but it's not a perfect connection. And while we're on this subject, why would you brand an arcade game after Real Monsters? Now, granted, you look at their Nickelodeon shows between 94 and 96. Granted, there weren't any better options, but the big issue was translating the show to an arcade game was going to be an uphill battle to begin with, and I don't think it worked. I'm sorry. Reason number 3, ticket values. Now, this game is a total of 9 ticket values you could win. 1 is digital and can be changed, and the others are built in. Now, these values range from 12 tickets to 0 tickets. Now, the 0 ticket option is a complete slap in the face to a 5-year-old. If you're like, if you're branding arcade games towards really, really young kids. You know, you want to make sure that they get at least one mercy ticket. The idea of them winning no tickets, just no, doesn't work. And I mean, if you're marketing a game towards those under 10, you got to have mercy tickets. That's just the way it is. And I think the biggest reason that the game failed, reason number 4, replayability or lack thereof. I did a whole video on the Going Nuts virtual pinball table, and I said that if this thing was created in real life, if you had any other option besides Going Nuts, it wouldn't be fun. If it was the only option available, it might be fun, but if there was literally another option there, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be fun. You'd play it for a few minutes, you get bored, and you'd find something else. Well, this logic applies to real monsters because, again, maybe there is a way to time the ball to get the jackpot, but most 5-year-olds are not going to have the patience or the token capacity to practice until they can win every time. It's just not going to happen. Maybe there's a few, but the majority won't. And it's another game that you play it once or twice, like, oh, this is fun, you get bored, and then you go find something else. You know, in arcades, sorry, that's not the kind of thing arcade companies and arcade games, not the kind of thing that you want. You don't want a game where you're bored for... You play it twice, you get bored, you find something else. No, you want a game that kids are just coming in to play all the time. This is just not one of them. And this game is not remembered as a classic. Some people remember it, but most are forgotten and moved on. And the game did have potential, but it needed a lot of work, and it just wasn't a good move. And it's not surprising, but it is disappointing. And I really hope that I do get a chance to try this someday. I just want to see if I was right or wrong. That about does it for this week's episode. For the next day's random item show, I'm going to be discussing my collection of arcade ticket redemption cards. I'm Dave Frost, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you then.